The town of Briarwood was the kind of place where silence pressed heavy on your chest. Fields stretched for miles, dotted with rotting barns and houses that hadn't seen paint in decades. On the edge of town stood the abandoned Talbot farmhouse. Windows blackened, roof sagging, weeds swallowing the porch. People whispered about screams heard there in winter, about the Talbot family's sudden disappearance 30 years ago. Most dismissed it as small-town folklore. But when Deputy Claire Dalton brought her K-9 partner, Rex, to scout the property after a tip, the dog lunged toward an old stone wall. What he tore free left them breathless. The farmhouse loomed against a bruised sky, its broken shutters rattling the wind. Deputy Claire Dalton adjusted the beam of her flashlight, its cone of light quivering as if it carried her nerves. Beside her, Rex, a massive German shepherd, strained at the leash, his ears stiff, his breathing loud. "Easy, boy," Claire muttered, but her voice sounded too soft for the wide, hollow silence around them. Behind her, Sheriff Ed Mallory trudged across the uneven ground, boots crunching over frost-hardened weeds. At 62, Mallory had the weight of 3 decades of small-town law on his shoulders and the belly to prove it. He carried himself with a kind of stubborn gravity, like a man who'd seen enough to stop being surprised, but never enough to stop being haunted. "Dalton," he said, his voice gruff, "we had prank calls about this place for years. Kids sneaking out here to smoke or screw. You really think there's anything worth digging into?" Claire didn't answer right away. Her beam swept across the sagging porch, catching a door that dangled loose on one hinge. The farmhouse smelled of mildew and rot, the way a place smells when time has eaten a hollow. "I don't know," she admitted, but the call came from a block number. Said there's something inside the walls. Mallory gave a tired snort. Something inside the walls. "Christ." Rex yanked suddenly, pulling Claire toward the rear of the house. His growl vibrated low, primal, like the earth itself rumbling. Claire tightened her grip. "He's got something." Mallory muttered a curse, but followed. They rounded the side of the farmhouse, flashlights sweeping across weathered boards, until Rex lunged straight at the base of a crumbling stone wall that wrapped the property. His paws clawed furiously at the mortar, teeth snapping at loose stones. "Jesus, Rex." Claire pulled back, but the dog tore forward, muscles rippling. He wedged his muzzle into a gap and yanked hard. A stone tumbled free, landing with a dull thud. Claire bent low, the beam of her flashlight trembling. Behind the wall, blackness yawned open, stale and suffocating. Rex growled and shoved his head deeper, barking sharp and desperate. "Dalton," Mallory said, his voice suddenly serious. "Call him off." But Rex refused to be called. He dragged out another loose stone, then something else, something pale, curled in on itself. He clamped his jaws and pulled. Claire's breath caught. Her beam froze on what Rex had uncovered. It was a child's shoe, mud-caked, cracked leather, impossibly small. And inside it, bones. The silence afterward felt suffocating. Even Rex stopped barking, panting hard, his dark eyes fixed on the opening in the wall, as if he'd torn the lid off something best left sealed. Mallory's jaw worked, but no words came out. His hand went to his mouth, rubbing at the bristles of his graying beard. "Jesus Christ," he finally muttered. "Get that dog back. Now!" Claire tugged Rex away, though the shepherd resisted, growling low his throat as if warning them not to turn their backs. They stood there, listening to the hollow wind scrape across the dead fields. Claire's mind raced. "It's not just folklore," she whispered. "The Talbots didn't leave." Mallory shot her a sharp look. "Don't go jumping to conclusions. We'll call in the state, get a team out here." But Claire saw in his eyes the same grim knowledge gnawing at her gut. Something terrible had happened here, and they just brushed the surface. The news spread through Briarwood faster than smoke and dry brush. By dawn, the Talbot farmhouse was cordoned off with yellow tape, deputies stationed at the perimeter. Claire hadn't slept. She sat on the hood of her cruiser, sipping bitter gas station coffee, while Rex lay at her feet, restless. Locals gathered at the edge of the tape, whispering, craning for glimpses. Old women crossed themselves. Teenagers filmed on their phones until Mallory barked at them to clear out. By mid-morning, The forensics van rolled in from the county seat, unloading men and women in white coveralls. They moved like pale insects against the dying grass. Claire trailed behind them as they pried deeper into the wall. Bones emerged one after another, tiny, brittle, incomplete, the remains of at least 3 children. Someone retched behind her. Claire didn't look back. Her stomach had knotted too tight to allow anything up or down. Rex whined beside her, ears flat. He pawed at the ground as though restless to dig more, to uncover what lay hidden beyond. Mallory approached, his lined face set in stone. 3 sets of remains so far, he muttered. All children. And that's just one section of the wall. Claire swallowed. How the hell did nobody find this for 30 years? Mallory glanced toward the farmhouse, its windows like empty eyes. Because nobody wanted to. Around here, people keep their heads down. Pretend the shadows ain't there. She studied him. There was something in his tone, something sharp, bitter, as if he knew more than he was letting on. That evening, Claire stopped by the Rusty Nail, the town's only bar. It was dim, smelling of spilled beer and fried grease. A few regulars sat hunched over their drinks, voices low, glancing toward her as she entered in uniform. Behind the bar, Hank Jeffers polished a glass with a rag that looked dirtier than the glass itself. He was thick-shouldered, with faded tattoos crawling up his arms and eyes that never seemed to meet yours directly. "Dalton," he said, voice gravelly, "heard you stirred up ghosts out at Talbot's place." Claire slid onto a stool, setting her hat down. Word travels fast. In this town, it always does. She studied him. Hank was the kind of man who seemed carved from the same wood as the town itself, hard, weathered, full of knots no one wanted to untangle. She knew he'd grown up here. He'd been a teenager when the Talbots vanished. "You ever hear anything?" she asked. Hank shrugged, pouring her a whiskey without asking. "Just stories. Same as you. House is cursed. Family ran off in the night. Or maybe—" He leaned closer, voice low. "Maybe they didn't run at all." Claire narrowed her eyes. "You sound like you know something." Hank smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Knowing and saying are 2 different things, Deputy." Before she could press further, Rex barked sharply from where he waited by the door. The sound was urgent, insistent. Heads turned. Claire stood quickly, heart-thumping. She'd learned to trust the dog's instincts. Outside, Rex pulled her toward the side of the bar. He stopped near a dumpster, nose to the ground, then looked up at her, growling. Claire crouched. In the dirt, half buried, lay a small wooden figurine, a carved horse, worn smooth by time, with a crack down its side. Her stomach dropped. She'd seen a photograph once, in an old case file about the Talbots. Their youngest boy, Peter, had carried a wooden horse everywhere. And now here it was, not at the farmhouse, but behind Hank Jeffers' bar. Claire straightened slowly, gripping the figurine tight. She looked back at the door, at Hank leaning in the frame, smoking a cigarette, eyes watchful. Something cold slid down her spine. The figurine felt heavy in Claire's palm, though it couldn't have weighed more than an ounce. The little horse was smooth from years of handling, but the crack down its flank looked recent, sharp as if forced open. She slipped it into her coat pocket just as Hank Jeffers flicked his cigarette, but into the gravel. His eyes caught hers briefly, measured, assessing, too calm for a man who just witnessed her discovery. "You find something?" His voice was casual, but beneath it Claire heard a thread of steel. She forced her expression into neutrality. "Just trash." Hank gave a grunt, taking a long drag from another cigarette he lit with cupped hands. "Place collects plenty of it." Claire didn't believe him for a second. She clipped Rex's leash tighter and walked back to her cruiser, pulse hammering. Later that night, she sat at her kitchen table, the figurine on the wood in front of her. The only light came from the small lamp above, pooling a yellow glow that sharpened the edges of her fatigue. Outside, the town was swallowed in silence, the kind that stretched on until it started to feel hostile. Rex lay at her feet, restless. Every few minutes he would lift his head, ears pricked toward some sound Claire couldn't hear. She pulled the Talbot file from the thin cabinet she'd dragged home from the station. The pages smelled of dust and neglect. Inside were faded photographs. The family standing in front of the farmhouse, smiling in that stiff, old-fashioned way. Father, mother, 3 children. Her eyes found the smallest, Peter, clutching the carved horse. She stared between the photo and the figurine until the resemblance was undeniable. Her throat tightened. If the toy had ended up behind Hank Jeffers' bar, then someone had carried it there. Someone who wanted to keep pieces of the Talbots close. Her phone buzzed, shattering the silence. Sheriff Mallory. She answered quickly. Sheriff. His voice was low, tight. Dalton, we've got problem. Meet me at the station. Now! The station was nearly empty when she arrived. Mallory was in his office, blinds half shut, the glow of a single desk lamp making deep canyons in his lined face. He looked older than usual, worn down, like the news had added years overnight. On his desk lay 3 fresh folders. Each had photographs clipped to the front, blurry, hastily developed images. Claire leaned in, frowning. They showed the Talbot farmhouse, but not from today. These were old, dated 30 years back. Where the hell did these come from? She asked. Mallory rubbed a hand over his jaw. Anonymous drop at the front desk. No one saw who left them. Claire picked up the first photo. It showed the farmhouse at night, one window lit. A child silhouette in the frame. Another photo, same house, same window, but the silhouette was gone. A third photo, closer this time, showing what looked like a man standing by the barn, holding something long and sharp. She looked up sharply. These were taken during the time the Talbots disappeared? Mallory nodded, his mouth grim, and whoever took them never came forward. Claire felt the room tilt slightly. Why now? Why 30 years later? Mallory's eyes flicked toward the blinds, as though afraid someone might be listening. That's the question, isn't it? Rex shifted restlessly, his nails clicking against the linoleum. Claire's hand instinctively dropped to scratch his head, grounding herself. She hesitated, then pulled the wooden horse from her pocket and set it on the desk. Mallory's eyes narrowed. Where'd you get that? Behind Hank Jeffers' bar. His frown deepened, lines furrowing like cracks in stone. You're sure it's the same? Claire nodded. It matches the photos. Peter Talbot's toy. Mallory was silent for a long moment, staring at the figurine as if it carried some poison. Finally, he exhaled, slow and tired. There's things about this town, Dalton, things better left under the dirt. You start pulling, you won't like what unravels. Claire bristled. Sheriff, 3 children's remains are in that wall. We don't get to decide what stays buried. Mallory's eyes flicked to her, sharp as a knife. Don't lecture me, Deputy. You think you're the first to want answers? You think I never asked myself what happened out there? I did. And I learned fast there's lines you don't cross in Briarwood. Something in his tone set her teeth on edge. A man warning her, or protecting himself. Before she could press, the station door banged open. Deputy Carson stumbled in, pale and sweating. Sheriff, we've got another scene. The old orchard out on Miller Road. You need to see it. The orchard was a forgotten patch of land, trees twisted and half dead. Their fruit long since rotted away. The air smelled sour, heavy with damp leaves. Flashlights cut swaths of pale light as deputies moved nervously between the trunks. Carson led them to a hollow where the ground dipped. Hunter found it this evening, he muttered. Claire's stomach clenched the second she saw it. Another wall, not stone this time, but wood, boards nailed crudely together, half buried in the earth. Something seeped through the cracks, dark and sticky. Mallory swore under his breath. God damn it. Claire knelt, Rex at her side, growling low. She shone her light across the boards. Claw marks scored the surface, deep and frantic, like someone trapped inside had tried to tear their way out. One of the deputies gagged. Get open, Mallory barked. Hands hesitated, but the boards were pried loose. The stench that poured out was enough to make several men turn away. Inside lay more bones, larger this time, adult size, wrapped in tattered fabric that might once have been a dress. Claire pressed a hand to her mouth. The sight was obscene, wrong in a way that went beyond death. Beside the body, buried in dirt and cloth, was another figurine, not a horse this time. A crude carving of a bird, wings outstretched. Claire reached for it, her hand shaking. Another Talbot toy. Her mind raced. Whoever did this took trophies. Toys. Mementos. She turned, scanning the faces of the deputies lit by their trembling flashlights. Fear hung thick in the air. Mallory's jaw was tight. Too tight. He barked orders to cordon the area, to call the state investigators. But Claire noticed his hands. They shook as he lit a cigarette, and he smoked like a man trying to erase memory, not calm nerves. The next morning, whispers churned through Briarwood like a fever. The Talbots were back on everyone's tongue. At the diner, Claire overheard fragments. Always knew something was off with that family. They say, bones, lots of them. Sheriff Mallory's hiding more than he's saying. She turned to see Hank Jeffers at a corner booth, sipping black coffee, eyes on her. When their gazes met, he raised his mug in a mock toast, a smirk tugging at his mouth. Claire's blood ran cold. That night, she sat outside the farmhouse again, Rex pacing at her side. The walls loomed darker now, heavier. She couldn't shake the feeling that the house itself was watching her. She crouched, letting Rex sniff at the ground. He growled, circling near the porch, then sat, staring at the doorway. Claire followed his gaze. For a moment, just a flicker, she thought she saw a figure in the window. A child, face pale, watching her. Her breath hitched. She blinked and it was gone. She stood frozen, her heart pounding. Wind rattled the shutters, carrying with it something faint. A sound, not the wind, not an animal. A child's laugh, high and brittle, echoing from within the hollow house. The sound lingered in Claire's skull, thin as glass, laughter where no child should be. The farmhouse loomed against the night, its windows black sockets, drinking in the beam of her flashlight. Rex growled, body rigid, every muscle pulled taut like a bowstring. Claire stepped forward, her boots sinking into brittle leaves. The air smelled of mildew and rusted nails. Each breath stung her throat. She raised her radio. Sheriff Mallory, this is Dalton. I'm at the Talbot property. You'd better get here. Static hissed. Then Mallory's voice, slow and graveled. What the hell are you doing out there alone? I didn't have a choice, she whispered. Something's inside. A pause. Then, stay put. I'll be there in 10. But Claire didn't stay put. The door hung on its hinge, whispering with each gust. She pushed it wider and stepped into the dark. Inside, the farmhouse swallowed sound. Her light swept across peeling wallpaper, floors warped by damp. A staircase leaned crookedly in the center hall. Rex patted ahead, nose low, breath hot. The laugh came again, faint, behind the walls. Claire's hand tightened on her pistol. Who's there? Silence answered. She moved deeper into what had once been a kitchen. Broken dishes littered the counters. The sink held stagnant rainwater, a film of mold thick on the surface. Rex stopped at the far wall. His paw scraped, his ears pressed flat. Claire knelt, pressing her ear against the wood. A hollow echo, and beneath it, faint scratching. Her chest clenched. Not past scratching. Present. Jesus, she whispered. She pulled at the boards, splinters biting her hands. One came free, then another. The smell that burst out was foul, thick with rot and time. Behind the wall, a cavity gaped, filled with bundles of rags, bones, and small, carved toys. Horses, birds, a doll's face split down the middle. Her stomach lurched. Whoever had killed the Talbots hadn't just hidden them. They kept pieces, tucked them away like trophies. Rex barked sharply, spinning toward the doorway. Footsteps, slow, deliberate. Claire rose, weapon aimed. Sheriff Mallory stood in the frame, face pale in her light. He wasn't holding his radio anymore. He was holding a shotgun. Put it down, Claire, he said quietly. Her mouth went dry. You knew. Mallory's eyes glistened, full of something between sorrow and rage. I tried to bury it. God help me, I tried. The weight of his words sank cold into her bones. You, she whispered. His jaw tightened. Not me, my brother. Jacob. He lived out here, looked after the Talbots' land. Something snapped in him. I found what he'd done. I should have turned him in. Claire's hand trembled on the pistol. Instead, you covered it. Mallory's voice cracked, the weight of decades pressing through it. He was blood. My mother begged me, said it'd kill her to see him locked up. So I bricked up the walls and swore it would never come out. Her stomach turned. 3 children, Ed. A woman in the orchard. How many more? His eyes darkened. You think I don't ask myself that every damn day? But this town doesn't survive scandal. Briarwood's built on secrets. We keep them or we burn. Rex growled, stepping between them. Mallory raised a shotgun higher. Don't make me choose again, Claire. The standoff stretched thin, seconds dragging into eternity. Claire's finger twitched near the trigger. Her mind screamed, this is wrong. This can't be how it ends. Then a sound cut through, the crunch of boots outside. Another figure entered, shadowed against a doorway. Hank Jeffers. His smirk was gone. He carried a rifle, steady in his hands. Evening, Sheriff, he drawled. Looks like your secret finally crawled out. Mallory stiffened. Hank, this isn't your business. Oh, it's my business. Hank said, your brother used my barn once. You think I didn't know? I've been waiting 30 years to watch you choke on it. Claire's got twisted. You knew? And you stayed quiet. Hank's eyes flicked to her. Cold. Flat. A man learns to live with rot if it keeps the roof over his head. The 2 men faced each other. Mallory weighed down by guilt, Hank sharpened by resentment, and Claire stood between them, pistol shaking, heart clawing her ribs. Drop it, both of you, she said, voice raw. This ends tonight. For a moment, no one moved. Then Hank fired. The blast ripped the silence apart. What splintered near Claire's head. She dove, dragging Rex down. Mallory roared, firing his shotgun. Hank ducked behind the frame, cursing. Smoke and dust choked the room. Claire crawled to cover, ears ringing. Rex barked furiously, lunging toward the gunfire. Claire. Mallory's voice was hoarse. He'll kill us both. She raised her head, vision swimming. Hank was reloading. She took aim, then froze. Mallory wasn't aiming at Hank anymore. He was aiming at her, his eyes locked on hers, full of weary finality. You were never supposed to see this. I can't let you take it further. Her breath caught. Betrayal sliced deeper than the danger. Ed, for a moment his face cracked, remorse flooding in. Then Rex lunged, teeth sinking into Mallory's arm. The shotgun fired wild, tearing into the ceiling. Mallory howled. Dropping the weapon, Claire surged forward, slamming him against the wall. Boards shattered, toys and bones spilling on the floor. The farmhouse seemed to groan, as if exhaling decades of secrets. Hank stepped in, rifle leveled at both of them, but Claire fired first. The shot echoed, sharp and final. Hank crumpled, blood blooming across his chest. His rifle clattered against the floorboards. Mallory stared at her, breath ragged, arm bleeding from Rex's bite. His face was hollow now, like the man had been carved down to nothing. You don't understand, he rasped. This town, without its lies, it'll eat itself alive. Claire's hand shook. Then let it. By dawn, Briarwood was swarming with state police. The farmhouse was stripped open, walls gutted, secrets dragged into daylight, bags of evidence stacked against cruisers. Mallory sat cuffed in the back of a car, head bowed. His eyes never lifted as Claire walked past. Rex trotted beside her, muzzle stained with dust, tail low. She scratched his head, grounding herself in his steady warmth. At the edge of the property, townsfolk gathered, their faces pale, voices hushed. Some cried, some cursed. None looked surprised. Deep down, they'd always known the shadows were real. Claire stood there, exhausted, staring at the farmhouse that had swallowed so many lives. One of the state investigators approached quietly. Hell of a mess you uncovered. Brave work, deputy. She nodded faintly. Her throat was too tight for words. As the crowd dispersed and the morning light spread thin across the fields, Claire crouched, resting a hand on Rex's neck. His steady breathing grounded her, reminding her she wasn't alone. "You did good, boy," she whispered. The farmhouse loomed behind them, broken open, its silence finally shattered. But the weight of what had hidden would linger, through every whisper in Briarwood, every shadow cast by its fields. Claire closed her eyes, letting the cold air sting her lungs. She didn't feel triumph, only sorrow. And in that quiet, heavy moment, she understood, some walls don't just hold secrets. They hold the shape of grief itself. And once broken, that grief seeps into everyone who dares to look.